everybody to our very first press sessions event on the evolution of the Southampton Village Business District. My name is Gavin Manu, along with my wife Catherine, who's seated right over here. We are the publishers of the Express News Group, and that company just came into existence this summer. Thank you. It was a merger of our newspaper, the Sag Harbor Express, with the Southampton Press, the East Hampton Press, and 27east.com. We're so lucky to have joined this team, a tremendous group of people. Some of them are here today. We have Joe Lockheim, who's the former publisher and now our Chief Financial Officer. Our managing editor, Bill Sutton. Our sales manager, Paul Conroy, who I'm sure a lot of you know. Greg Wayner, who's our Southampton reporter and will be covering this event for us. Ellen DioGuardi, our director of events, seated at the door. And our executive editor, Joe Shaw, who in a few moments I'll turn over the moderating duties for this event. He's super knowledgeable about the news in the village, in the town, and he'll do a great job for us. Together we welcome to you what we hope is going to be a productive series about issues that are important to us. They're designed to inform the community, engage the community in ways that go beyond our traditional print and digital media. Seated with us today are leaders from the Southampton business community, alongside members of the village board and the planning commission, and along with all of you who are obviously tremendously important members of the community as well. We'll introduce our panelists in a moment, and you'll all have an opportunity to ask your own questions. We just ask you to sort of flag us down, raise your hand. We'll bring a microphone over to you so you can speak into that, introduce yourself, and any follow-up questions or anything like that, it needs to be picked up by the microphone. We do ask that your comments are brief, 1 minute or less, and then we're happy to have some back and forth. We've had about a dozen of these events in Sag Harbor Village over the last 2 years, and we've seen real progress as a result of those discussions. Kimberly Allen, who's on our panel today, actually attended a few of those and said, we need to do these in Southampton. So Kimberly, thank you. Here we are today. We're hoping with the help of everyone in this room, we can start something bigger and better and move these conversations along. And we're not going to solve all the problems in this room today, but we can get started. We can start looking for solutions, and we can engage the community in the process. And that's super important. And at the newspaper, we're proud to help do that. I do want to thank a couple of our sponsors for these Southampton sessions. Farrell Fritz, attorneys at law, David Gilmartin and Brian Doyle are in the room. Thank you very much. As well as the Hackett team from Merrill Lynch right here on Hampton Road. Thank you. Any of you local business owners who are in the room and care about this community, which I think is probably all of you, or you wouldn't be here today, and if you want to be part of this series and come along with us for the ride, talk to me, talk to Paul, talk to any of us. I think you'll be really proud of this partnership in the end. We're gonna be doing these every month. We're gonna be also going west of the canal. We're doing them out in East Hampton and Sag Harbor, and those businesses that support us will really be part of the process of bringing these issues to the community. So with that, I would like to pass things on to Joe Shaw, our executive editor of the Express News Group. Mr. Shaw.
Thank you. Thank everybody for coming out, venturing out on Friday the 13th. That took some courage, so I appreciate that. I wanted to just start off by saying there's a lot of excitement about this first session. It sold out very quickly, and we actually had to turn people away, which is amazing. I have always said, one of the things, not long ago, we did an exercise in our newsroom about what we thought was important, and one of the key values that we had was that we as a newspaper organization need to lead conversations, not just follow them. And so the merger and these press sessions now are going to let us do that. I'm very happy about that. I also think that the excitement for this first session shows just how eager people are to discuss these issues substantively and to try and come up with creative, innovative solutions. So thank you all for being here for the very first one. It is not going to be the last one, I promise you that. And I think talking is the first step to finding some solutions. So very briefly, the format, I'm going to introduce each of our panelists at the table. That was slick. I'm going to introduce the panelists at the table. They've each been given a question to start things off, and we're going to go left to right, starting with Mayor. And they'll answer those questions first, just down the line. And then we're going to immediately open it up to audience questions. Bill Sutton, our managing editor, is going to help me, there he is, with the second microphone. So please, if you have a question, and we want you, everybody in this room is part of the conversation. So if you have something to add or a question to ask, please raise your hand. Wait till we get to you with the microphone. I'm going to do the whole Phil Donahue thing the best I can to sort of run around with the cordless mic. I'd ask everybody to please keep your comments brief. We want to give everybody a chance to speak. I'm also not going to interrupt people as much as I can help it. I am going to try and keep the conversation moving, however, because we want as many voices as we can. It is a conversation, so please don't wait your turn. If you have something to, after we get through the first set of questions, if you have something to add, and that's the panel or in the audience, please just catch my eye, raise your hand, and we'll give you a chance to join the conversation. I'm going to be more like a traffic cop than anything. So with all that, let's go. We're going to try and finish at 2 o'clock, by the way, because we assume everybody has things to do, and the 12 to 2 time period is a busy one. So we'll get you out of here on 2 o'clock. So let me introduce the panelists from left to right, starting at the far end. This is newly elected Mayor Jesse Warren of Southampton Village, who's also the owner of the Village Shop Tenant on Main Street. Next to him, we have Aaron Hetrick-Meany, who is the owner of Topiary Flower Shop on Job's Lane. We have Shannon Willey, who is the owner of Sea Green Designs on Job's Lane. Dennis Schmidt, the owner of Schmidt's Market on North Sea Road. Next to Dennis is Paul Travis, who is the chair of the Southampton Village Planning Commission. Next, we have Mark Parrish, who is a newly elected Southampton Village trustee and the co-owner of Sip and Soda on Hampton Road. Next to him, Kimberly Allen, Southampton Village trustee. And finally, beside me is Bo Hulse, the owner of Coldwell Banker Bo Hulse Realty Company on Job's Lane, and I would venture to say the member of the panel who most channels Jim Morrison. I think probably more than anybody else at the table, he's your man. If you're looking for Jim Morrison, Bo's your man. All right. So let's get started. We'll start with the mayor. Jesse, the question that we talked about was, hang on one second. There we go. You successfully ran for mayor on a platform based on the needs of the business community in the village, which is what we're here to talk about today. So you're a few months into the job. Do you have new insights about those needs that you didn't have when you were during the campaign, when you were really just a business owner at the time, now that you've been in office for a few months?
Well, thank you, Joe. That's a good question. I do have new insights, and I'm very pleased to have been and honored to have been elected mayor of Southampton Village. As many of us know, part of the platform was regarding downtown and business vibrancy, coupled with water quality and the environment. And to some extent, or to a large extent, they go hand in hand. And I'll be speaking about that later today, either through this question or through others. My insights have not changed. They've only gotten more passionate and stronger. One of those insights, which is something that we ran on, was the introduction of a sewer system, of a water treatment system. This is something that would allow the Suffolk County Health Department to lift its moratorium on restaurant openings and other wet use openings. To me, this is critical for the success of our village. It's critical to fulfill some of our vacancies that we have. Recently, we've met with the hospital, Chief Administrative Officer Bob Schaloner, as well as other representatives from the hospital, and they are likely willing to work with us on allowing us to form a relationship to tap into their sewer system. Now, that is not a panacea for everything. There's limited use there. There's approximately 50 to 60,000 gallons of wastewater treatment available per day. So it's not going to sewer the whole village. It might not even be able to sewer the whole downtown, but at least it's a start in the right direction, and it will serve as a medium-term solution until we can build additional infrastructure. So that's something that's critical. It's also critical for our water quality. This is another passion of mine, but we are pumping our wastewater, even today as we eat our lunch here, right into the ground, and that can no longer happen. It's a major problem in Suffolk County. Our county executive, Steve Bellone, said that water quality is his mission, and between the introduction of a sewer system and innovative alternative septic systems, this is critical for our environment and for a business district. Now, there are some insights that have maybe sharpened a bit. As many of us have read in the Southampton press, I was not pleased with the behavior of one particular landowner on Job's Lane, who I believe intentionally destroyed his property at the expense of every single business owner in this village, as well as our entire community. He put flamingos in his courtyard. He demoed the brick. He violated laws as far as not going in front of our architectural review board and whatnot. I researched some of our code. I was obviously told that the site was safe and secure and there was nothing that the village could do. I did not believe that. I researched our code. We realized that this is a public nuisance. We realized that this was in violation of the fact that you can't demo a property in our historical district. And in collaboration with the building department, which did a great job, we actually sent him a very stern letter, and he is already improving the property. But ultimately, this is a community. We all are in this together, and it is very important for our business district to be vibrant, but also to have landlords. And we have a few tonight, like Lori Carson, who is an excellent landlord, who provides the home to Ralph's Barbershop, among other places, who is invested in our community. And it's our hope and our desire to get more landlords to be invested in our community, and part of it to bring everyone together, to provide the homes for our year-round entrepreneurs and our local merchants, instead of intentionally pushing them out. So there's a lot to discuss today. I will pass the microphone over. I know Joe is looking for the microphone to be sent to my left. So there's plenty, and I'm really looking forward to having these conversations with everybody today. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I gave you the look my mom used to give me a lot when I was doing something I shouldn't be doing. Aaron, your shop has been open for 29 years, Topiary. Is there one factor that makes doing business there harder today than it was back when you started? Something that's changed since the beginning?
Things have definitely changed from the beginning. I had the sort of good fortune of being a tenant which was owned by a local family that we grew up with and spent our winters in Vermont with. And Jack Rist was the sort of the overseer of the property. And I do feel like back when I opened up, if your plumbing went, well, you called Jack, and then Jack came down, and if he couldn't fix it, he called somebody else. They paid for garbage. And when my garbage, because I own a flower shop, so I generated more garbage than they'd ever seen. You know, Jack would get crotchety every now and then and come down and yell at me about the state of the garbage. And then the garbage was turned over to me. And I think the next step was the triple net lease. And I really believe that there's a cost of doing business for everybody. And I do believe that it's a factor in this community which has been very difficult to stay in business, paying your landlord's taxes as well as their insurance. I have insurance that I have for the interior of my space. I think it's $1 million in coverage. I'm not 100% sure, but I do think that did cause a real wrinkle for a lot of people. That became a reality for the people in our area, you know, as tenants of Herbert Realty, probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And I would say that was one of the biggest changes for a small business owner.
And when you say triple net, you mean that's the rent, insurance, and taxes are all paid by the tenant rather than the...
Yes, also with the natural progression of your lease, that grows each year. Now we have to pay our portion or our landlord's portion of their insurance as well as their property taxes. And I do believe that those are killers for a small business owner.
Got it. Okay. Shannon, in our print section that we did this week previewing this event, you had mentioned an idea for a tax rebate for businesses that stay open year-round in the village. Can you explore that idea a little bit and explain how that might be set up to work for businesses in the village?
Yeah, I would love to share my thoughts on that. It's an idea that piggybacks on what Aaron is saying about triple net leases. I've been in business almost 20 years. I've had 3 leases, and I pay between town and village taxes almost $7,000 on top of my rent. And one of the things we've all discussed as a community is the need for year-round businesses. And I think that a way to encourage, because we can't dictate who a landlord puts in there, we can't dictate what a landlord charges for a property or for rent, but we can offer an incentive for a year-round business. And I think that giving some portion of those taxes back to a year-round business would be very helpful. And I also think that if a tenant is fortunate enough not to have a triple net lease, it's an incentive to that landlord who may be paying those taxes directly to get a year-round tenant. I think it could work both ways, and I think it could be set up very easily in terms of, we all have to get a tenant CO. It can be, are you a year-round business? Are you a pop-up business? It would be very easy, I think, to set up parameters in terms of how many days a week you're open, a limitation on how many days in a row you might be closed. I'm not saying everybody has to be open 365 days a year, but I think that if we give an incentive to businesses who want to be part of the community year-round, I think that we can draw businesses here. I think it is an incentive for landlords to actually seek out year-round tenants. And I think it would be something that would be fairly simple to get set up. And it's something that states are doing, all over the country to bring in businesses and develop businesses in their states. So that's my concept. And it's a direct response to the question of the rents being so high, because I don't feel that we can dictate what a landlord charges for a tenant for rent.
Okay, I want to make it clear, too. We're planting a lot of flags here that we can circle back to and talk in a little more detail later. So, Dennis, what special challenges do you face as the owner of a market that's located on North Sea Road that's really outside what's generally considered to be the heart of the business district? Does it give you a unique perspective on the village's business district in general?
Well, keep this short and sweet, but the primary thing that influences my business is how well Main Street and the rest of the village is doing. And Southampton is doing well, I'm doing well. There are, of course, other factors that have occurred in the last years, or it happens every few years. The demographics have changed dramatically in the last few years. I think Airbnb has changed, and I don't think we even understand yet totally how it's changed, but it's certainly changed how businesses are done and how much business we do in the course of a season or in the course of a year. So, as Main Street goes, I go, and probably my concern and everybody else's concern is how bad business is in January, February, and March, because that's where we give back our money, or that's how we spend the first half of our season paying back the bills from those months. So, and I know I'm not alone in that, and I'm lucky I probably make profit for 4 months or so a year. I probably break even a couple of months a year, and I probably lose money 3 or 4 months a year. And I know I'm not alone in that, and that's the way it's been. I've been in the village now, starting my 40th year in business here. And it's funny because I can relate to Erin, my first store. The garbage was also included in the rent, and of course, as my business generates a lot of garbage, so after it was time to renew the lease, they wouldn't renew my lease, and he made some story up of why he wasn't going to renew it, and then when my lawyer finally called me and said, if you pay for the garbage, he'll renew your lease, I said, fine, why didn't he just say so in the first place? But it's true. And there's other factors that affect my business. The traffic on County Road 39 is a big deal. People plan their day and everything around the traffic on 39. 3 o'clock, it's already, the trade parade is starting back. People don't head west. And same thing in the morning. People are reluctant to come earlier before 9 o'clock or so because traffic is bumper to bumper coming that way. And these are just things. And if you want to go back further than that, the town board, in their infinite wisdom, about 15 years ago, allowed gas stations to sell everything in the world under the sun, because I guess they didn't think they were making enough profit selling gasoline to us. So a lot of traffic that would come to the village, not only this village, Bridgehampton or East Hampton, whatever, would stop off to the delis and the markets and buy food, and that no longer have to. They can stop in gas station and get pretty much everything they want. So I'm going to leave it go at that.
And I'll mention that traffic is a topic that we have on our list of future topics for press sessions, so we'll have some fun with that, I'm sure. Paul, as chair of the Planning Commission, to try and keep this from focusing entirely on the doom and gloom, what successes have you seen in recent years that give you hope for the business community and maybe lay out a direction forward?
Okay. Well, first, Joe, thanks for doing this. I think it's very exciting for us at the Planning Commission to see the Village Business District become a focus for everyone. It's an issue we've been concerned about for a long time. Under C-Max Sammy in 2009, the village engaged Aaron Krantz, Exit and Kuhn to come up with a vision plan for the business district. And many of the things that we're talking about today were in that plan. That led to a zoning plan in 2015. One of the things that was identified, this was, if you think back to 2009, the parish had announced it was going to leave, the library had left, the police station had moved out, the fire department was going to move out, and there were increasing vacancies on Hampton Road, on Nugent Street, and on Windmill Lane. And we were fairly alarmed with what was going on. And one of the things that the planners said they thought was unique about the village was the art focus of the village and the amazing history of the village with William Merritt Chase and Fairfield Porter and Larry Rivers and everybody else who had worked here. So they really talked about creating an art district along Job's Lane and really going from the Historical Society all the way to the Southampton Cinema. And I think the amazing thing for me has been to see that starting to happen. So just, I love stats. The Southampton Arts Center now has considerably more attendance than the parish did when it was in the village. And anyone, I wasn't there, I think Kim was the star of the event. The Arts Center had 600 people come to Silent Disco a few weeks ago. There was a great picture, Kim, I think, in the Southampton Press at that event. With Brenda Simmons. And so that has really become an enormous focus for the village. Then Peter Marino obviously buying the old Rogers Memorial Library. So I think things are happening. They're exciting. If you look at Hampton Road today versus 2009, it's a much more vital street. So I think there's a number of things that have happened that are good. And I think also we have a very engaged group of trustees between Jesse and Kim and Mark who really are determined to do things. And I think that bodes really well for the Village Center.
Okay, great, thanks. Mark, in the print preview that we did, you talked about the need for business owners in the village to break through the isolation and not just work together, but actually get to know each other. You said the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. How do you get that message out to business owners, and how do you facilitate that?
So, Joe, thank you very much. And what the press is doing to start this series is really what I mean by that. Our whole community is really going to be important driving this whole new vision of the business forward. That was a quote by Aristotle, so that's my inner Greek coming out. It's just one of the things I truly believe. When we started some business think tank meetings back in the spring, we got a pretty good traction. We did 2 of them, I believe, 2. And it was really weird because I've been here most of my life. My family's operated the business. Now I'm in it since 1958. And I didn't know a lot of the other business owners around my village. And it's sort of disappointing me because growing up, it was really, really, really connected. Most of the people knew each other. They really sort of looked out for each other. And that's what I mean, a team has much greater, effort and results than an individual. So I'm really into saying, hey, look, if we know and we get to know our fellow business owners, word of mouth is a tried and true way of getting people to places. I get people to come in to me all the time and say, where should I go for this? And you know what? There's a lot of times I can answer, and there's a lot of times I cannot. I walk down Main Street, Job's Lane, and I don't know a lot of the shop owners or managers. I think that is integral moving forward because if we are on the same page, we can communicate. Websites, open store formats where we can get to know the new people that are coming in, and really sort of pushing our brand as we are here and we want to do business. Because we are busy in the summer. There's no doubt about that. We saw that this summer. The activity, the traffic was phenomenal. But where we are going to be successful is those off-season months. That's the thing that is going to allow us to move forward and start bringing in more people. Because if we are gloomy, nobody's going to want to come here and put businesses in. The board wants to change that look. They really want to start doing some things that are going to give better optics and try and get people to stay here. But we need this community, we need the press to keep moving these things forward because we're not going to be able to do it ourselves. We need a lot of momentum, and I appreciate you doing this, and I want to get that momentum going. Thank you.
Thanks, appreciate that. Kimberly, in the preview that we did, you had talked about looking to other areas for ideas and including creating business incentive districts. And you talked about partnerships with the town and county and the state and how those funds might help village government put something in place that could have a tangible effect on eliminating the vacancies in the village and other factors, which everyone agrees is a problem. Talk about that a little bit. How would that happen?
Sure. I think it's incumbent upon our board to always lead and engage with our fellow government partners, whether it be at the county or state level, for all the free marketing dollars that they offer and research that drives traffic to our village. We know that money is out there. In fact, Jesse mentioned it with regards to sewage treatment, but there's also a huge push now at the county to drive development to Suffolk County and the East End. So there's an array of areas, and we're still very much in the exploration stage, but Discover Long Island has a new marketing team. They get 1.5 million hits on their website. But if you go to their website and you click in Southampton Village, you see a picture of a parking lot, and then you see a little dot that says Southampton Fest. What doesn't come through is we have 7 miles of the most beautiful beaches in the world that rivals Tahiti. We have these incredible restaurants that have local seafood, local produce. We have Southampton Fest, we have the Festival of Lights, we have all these activities. And by the way, you can go and even, kayak off of our streets here. So nobody knows the live, work, play. And to Mark's point, we need to ramp up the brand. We have a great brand. And Jesse and others are working on and Mark are working to put together a logo for our village and also advertise this kind of brand that we are a live, work place. My 25-year-old son is here. He's never really been here in the shoulder season since college. He said it's so phenomenal. And he said, but what does Sag Harbor and Montauk do? Because all my friends go there. And I said, good, you need to help me here. But just to cover off 2 other things, I don't want to be a windbag, and thank you so much to Joe Shaw.
You're not over the line yet. You're good.
But there are other areas. There's a Suffolk County Economic Development Agency. They really look for more manufacturing development. But Canoe Place Inn is being overhauled with an event center and condos. And they're getting all this marketing money. And why can't we steal some of that? Because we're only 6 or 7 miles east of that. Those people want to do other things than just sit in one spot. And then for more strategic support, there's something called there's a lot of government names here, Industrial Development Corp. It's a thought leadership group. It involves a lot more work on behalf of not only the board, but hopefully all of you who will join our business task force that we're creating. But, and I didn't mean to steal the thunder from Trustee Parrish and the mayor, but they actually are helping 8 communities on Long Island, and they strategically assess the community, not just the village, but all the outlying areas and populations, the transit, the workforce housing, all the way down to the lighting, to the retail mix. It doesn't replace the planning commission and a lot of our good consulting work, but it augments it, and then that's a feeder to funding for septic systems, you know, maybe events, craft beer. I know Greg Wayner wants us to have a craft beer.
Right now.
Right now, following this session. But the point is, there's a lot of good work. If you go on their website, you know, you look and see what are other towns that don't even have what we have doing. And they're doing everything from analyzing their retail mix. It can't just be high-end. We have a lot of unique stores. It can't just be commercial. InterScience did a very perceptive study in 2007 on Sag Harbor and said, be careful, don't let large block stores and commercial offices infiltrate your main street. So they put in code to move it. I know you worked on some of that as well. But that makes that one street very walkable. So we need to bring that variety in and think along that dimension. The other thing that came through, which we're just exploring, is we heard that there's a flow transfer right program where you can transfer the density, the wastewater density, up to twice of what it is. Our counselor's researching it, but maybe we can have a sprinkle of a couple of cafes between now and the septic system or a cluster system. So anyway, that's that.
Thank you, Kimberly. A lot to chew on there. Bo, you talked in our preview section about parking, and you talked about the fact that we need to have parking available for customers, not for employees. And you also said that the village might be a little too aggressive in enforcing a 2-hour limit. Talk a little bit about the role of parking for all of the businesses in the village and how important it is.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. It starts with me, first of all, and my company and my agents, and I'm reaching out to them to support my vision and giving space back to the retail on Job's Lane and wherever they may be. And I have offices here as well as in West Hampton, and I have Lynn's Market in front of me, and I'm encouraging everyone and giving the agents and the brokers also an incentive to do the right thing. That being said, I think we all have an obligation to the community to do our parts as business owners and to send a message from us to them. So I'm going to make a pledge today. You won't see my car on Job's Lane. And if I am on Main Street, I'm probably eating somewhere. But I think this is important. And there is an awful lot of us in this industry, the real estate, as you know. There's many companies on Main Street, and 2 of us, and there's a lot of us in the community. So I think that's going to help. And I'm hoping that I can share this passion for parking with respect, I'm calling it, to the other organizations, Corcoran, Sotheby's, Douglas Elliman, Brown, Harrison, Stevens, Nest Seekers, Compass. I can't go on anymore. All that competition. But the other thing I want to share with you is that what I see happening, that people want to come into the town and they want to spend time with us. And the marking of the tires, and in some states, if you do a little research, as I've done, it's actually unconstitutional. And it's been known, and there's some documentation that will follow. But what I'm saying to you is just that if someone's coming into a restaurant and they're waiting online, they don't know when that tires are marked. But I will share this with you. I know there's frustration in both of those people. They came into the village, they want to enjoy this wonderful meal, they may want to do shopping, they want to do this, they want to do that, and they have this 2-hour window and they're just circling constantly. I think it puts them, they're not at ease. And I also think there's a fear of the $75. Is it 75 or 100 now? It's a high figure. Anyway, that's an awful lot on top of 25% gratuity. And I'm generous, so I do 30. Anyway, there is a mobile app called Park Mobile. Okay, and this app actually allows, and I'm going to talk as this goes on. And what happens is that this app, you can go in, I'll fix that this way. You can actually go into this app. And what one would do is that one comes into the village, they're there, and that space is open, and they actually take that space over. And they pay a certain amount of money for that spot and time, and it's a 2-hour limit. We're not changing that. However, they're in the middle of dessert, they can actually go back in and extend it a half an hour. But they're paying. It's all done through an internet. Everyone's happy. They have control of their destiny. It's good stuff. It's a phone. You can actually do anything. Thermostat. I do. Thanks. Well, I do now. Stepping from out east. We're not going to go there. But my point is there's so many other ways to do this and not set that feeling of anxiety. And these apps and things that all of us in this room, some of us of age, we didn't think this was going to work, and it's working. We do everything. I set my temperature with it. My air conditioning comes on at a certain time. All of this is being done through this. And this is happening, and they've taken other steps. You want to go to see the Giants, you can actually reserve 3 or 4 different spots as you go in, and it just makes the whole experience, which we're all talking about, that much better. And this town is amazing. And what it has to offer with the Schmitz and other families, I've been here since 1987. I have a passion for this town. But I see that it can grow if we just use this communication between the community, to your point, knowing every one of the other owners of other businesses. I don't do enough of it. I should go out, shake a hand, and also bring these ideas. And I have to thank Joseph and Southampton Press for bringing us all together today. So let's give them a night.
Appreciate that. So if you'll indulge me for a moment, we'll come back to you, but I do feel a little bit obligated. He's not on the panel, but there are 2 people who came the farthest, I venture to say, for today's event. Mark Waxman and his wife are here, and they flew up from Florida specifically to be here today for this event. And Mr. Waxman is a property owner as well in the village of some of the commercial properties. And I think it would be really interesting to get a different perspective. So with everybody's indulgence, I'd like to give Mr. Waxman a shot at having the floor for a moment. Some of the things that have been discussed about leases for the properties in the village, can you give us the other side of that from the property owner's perspective?
The bottom line in any business transaction is there's no free lunch. Someone has to pay the bills. I mean, if the lunch were here and everyone were paying, there's no free lunch in the business world. Someone has to pay the bills. And it's all a question of what the market can bear, what's reasonable. As landlords, we always look upon, is the tenant going to be a tenant that's good for the community? Are they going to be successful? If we don't think they're going to be successful, we have properties in many states. We will not rent to that tenant if we don't think they are going to be a success in that community. It doesn't serve anyone's purpose writing a lease, collecting rent, and finding someone who goes into bankruptcy or can't make the payments. We want to see them a part of the community. We've been very active in ownership here for almost 60 years. My wife's family, post-World War II, owned department stores throughout Suffolk County and helped build up Suffolk County. The problem can be put into one word: sewers. If the village of Southampton does not get sewers, then you're going to have a serious problem. Every other issue becomes irrelevant. Tenants will flock to this village because it's a beautiful place to come, but businesses need to have restaurants. The internet has changed the business throughout. Mall operators, shopping center operators, even office building people, we're all going through dramatic changes in our industry. The internet makes it possible for you running a business with less space. One of our properties is Brooks Brothers is a tenant. They're a long-term tenant of ours. They did not need all that space. So they temporarily moved out at the end of December. The owner of Brooks Brothers, who we have good relationships with, wanted to stay here. We wanted them to stay here. We made them a very favorable deal, I will tell you, because we thought it'd be good for the community. We subdivided. I have to say that the building department and all the people here were excellent to deal with, because there are places around the United States that they are anti-development. I will tell you that. But the village is fabulous to work with. If they weren't, I would say so. I'll tell you that. I mean, I'm not shy. So it is a very friendly business area here in the village. You have great people. We subdivided, spent a very substantial sum of money for that location. They're long-term owners. But we get calls all the time for a restaurant. A very good restaurant, independent owners who would like to put a restaurant, and we turn them down. There's no sewers. If you don't have restaurants in the modern era of retailing, all the other merchants are not going to do well. I don't care who you are. So if I can encourage one thing, whatever you have to do, whatever it takes, whatever monies have to be spent, it's sewers. Look at Patchogue. Many years ago, we were major investors in Patchogue. Okay, Patchogue is thriving. Okay, Sag Harbor is thriving because it has sewers. You take away the sewers, and you're not going to thrive. All these stores would be rented if you had sewers here where you can bring in restaurants and they stay open at night. It brings more street traffic. It makes it for a better village. So if I only can recommend one thing, whatever it takes, if you have to assess landlords, we're willing to put our money and our checkbook where our mouth is. We will pay, we will participate. You have to have a sewer assessment district. Whatever it takes, let's do it.
I appreciate you making the effort to be here, both of you, and I hope we can sort of count on you as an auxiliary member of the panel if there's anybody there. So let's come over here, and I'll give you a chance to make your point. If you can introduce yourself real quickly.
My name is Maureen Durbin. I'm a resident of Southampton Village. I'm just curious, we keep saying we need more restaurants, we need more restaurants, we need more restaurants. And the size of the village, how many restaurants can we support with or without sewers? I mean, we seem to have 11 or 12 on Joves Lane, Main Street, Jagger, and whatever the other one is, where Shippey's is. I'm just curious. The other thing is, everyone is like sad about the departure of the Parish Art Museum, but the Southampton Arts Center seems to have drawn more people into the community than anyone else. And I think we need to acknowledge Amy and Tom on the fantastic work they did of getting people into the village. Now we just have to figure out how to keep them here.
Amy and Tom are both here in the back, by the way. So. The restaurant question, Mark, do you want to answer, do you want to address that? When people say more restaurants in the village, is it a rising tide floats all boats, or is there a limited number of customers out there and more restaurants actually can be damaging for somebody who owns one of the existing ones? How do you look at that?
The pie gets bigger. I'm sorry, my slice might get smaller, but the pie gets bigger. So the more people you bring in and you have variety, you're going to have a better opportunity for this year-round business take. And I think that's really what it is. You know, we're understanding now through research that retail is, having an anchor is not what it is anymore. You know, with the advent of the internet and people can click like that and get something, it sort of takes away that, you know, draw to come on in and do that. What it does now is arts, entertainment, dining. Those we know now, that's how people have experienced, and then through that, it's interaction. And that's how we're learning. You know, we want to interact. What Tom and Amy are doing at the Art Center is really commendable. We bring Peter Marino into the mix now. But there is something that people really like to do. They like to eat, they like to have a cocktail, coffee, and they like to walk. And when they walk, and they have a couple of spirits in them, they're definitely going to spend. It's proven at casinos. So you know what? And families. This is another thing. We do have families out here. We concentrate on just the village, but our draw is really probably 5 to 10 miles outside. And if we don't make them feel welcome, if we don't make them feel part of this village, and that's a struggle that we're having. A lot of people outside of our village don't feel they belong, don't feel they're part of it. You know, so we're doing Summerfest, we do Parade of Lights, 4th of July. We get huge turnouts for that, huge. It's unbelievable. And sometimes the restaurants that next day are like, it was awesome last night. And there are people say, we couldn't wait. Our kids were doing this. There wasn't enough places to eat. So there is that feeling that people do want to interact. So it is. It is one of those things where, as a building owner too, could that hurt my, bottom line in the future? Possibly. But I think it's worth the investment for the village because we will keep going.
Okay. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, so I guess a few things. One is the Southampton Press has a poll, which I thought was a really useful poll. What are the things that you do in the village? And 29%, I think, said they dine. That was by far the biggest percentage of any activities in the village. So I think that tells us a lot about how the modern consumer is acting. I also think if you look at Sag Harbor and the number of restaurants that are there, that is part of the attraction, is the range. I also want to mention that wet uses are not only restaurants. One of the other issues we have in the village, until about 1965, there were over 100 residential units within the village. There's now, I think, about 30 left. So one of the very important things I think Sewer does, people really want to be able to walk and live within the village, and the sewer district would allow that to happen. I think that's very, very important in January, in February and March to have people who are living upstairs.
Okay. Yes. Get the microphone over to you.
Hi, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for organizing this. This is terrific, and hopefully there'll be many more of these sessions. I'd just like to mostly make a couple of comments. One is, I find this is very business-focused, and this village is very car-focused. I think you need to think a little bit broader of making it more consumer and visitor-focused, and also pedestrian-friendly. I mean, I live in the village. I often try to leave the car at home, but as a pedestrian, you have to push the button to cross. In the village, you don't even have, until recently, had like walk signs, like you don't know who has the right of way. You can't even bike into the city and into the village. And there's also it was encouraging to see, Jesse, that you put your foot down on that little enclave that was destroyed. But there's really, if you think about it, there's no places to hang out. And we don't need more expensive restaurants. I mean, if you look in the summer, there's enough cars in the village already, but there's no way to connect the village by walking through. We have an arts district, but there's no coordinated activities. While we all agree, I think that sewage is a priority. I think some walkways, some better traffic flow, maybe even a shuttle bus from some parking lots so people can walk out. And sometimes the best solutions are counterintuitive. If you look at many cities, including Manhattan, they close traffic off for Broadway. What happened next? People come out, they hang out. They drink coffee, they bring their lunch, and they go shopping. And maybe it's time to extend the shopping hours. I don't know whether it's a code issue or not, but this is one of the only villages that rolls down up their sidewalks at 6 o'clock.
Let me ask you, Jesse, that for years the village has done studies and talked about becoming more walkable. Is that a priority that needs to be pushed to the forefront? Because it really hasn't been a priority since that study, which was at least 10 years ago, I believe, that came up with a concept.
Absolutely. It's a great question. Yesterday, we met with the head of economic development for Suffolk County, and I personally gave them a walking tour of our village and to show them that we could use their help, we could use all the help we can get. because our village, as Eric pointed out, is not so pedestrian friendly. In fact, I've used this example before where you start on Nugent Street and no one even thinks to walk to our library, which should be the heart of our community. It's the heart of many communities, and yet there's not even a crosswalk to get there. You have to go take a left on Windmill Lane. You've got to figure out if the cars are coming. And so that was one thing I brought up a few months ago, but I'd love to be able to connect our village to our library and have our residents be able to walk to our library and that be a central hub of our community. There's also some bike sharing programs that the village does work with, but we can take that a further step in that direction. I've also, and we've also, as our board and our community, we've pushed more use of open space and green space. I know I've reached out just to see what would happen to one of the PR directors for Amazon, for example. I said, I'd love to give you guys a tour of our village. Maybe you want to invest in some of our parks or partner with us with some of our parks just to create more open spaces and technology-focused activities. So these are things that we would love to see. So that's a great question. Now, there's one other thing I just wanted to point out. I have met with Mark Waxman, landlord, who just gave a nice presentation for us. But we've also met with some industry and business leaders in our village. And we came up with the idea of having something called maybe a sewer funding district, because many people in our community do have a fear that this is a $30+ million project, and how are we going to pay for that? So I'm going on a little bit of a tangent from the question, but what we came up with is a vehicle or a fund. Southampton, with its AAA bond rating, could borrow at approximately 2%. So a $30 million muni bond offering would be $600,000 a year of interest, $50,000 per month. We have business leaders, it sounds like Mark might be interested, who would be willing to pay into this fund so there's not $1 of interest expense parlayed to our taxpayer. And so we could have a sewer system funded by very cheap debt at the moment and paid for by business leaders who simply want to opt into this program. So I've got so much more to discuss on this, as well as the vision for the village, which does include more walking and pedestrian-friendly streets. I'll leave it at that for the moment. I'm happy to take more questions, as well as the rest of the panel, I'm sure, is happy to. So that's just a few things I wanted to put out there.
Does anybody else have anything to add? Sure, Erin.
I grew up in this village, and I certainly remember the days when there were tons of people walking the streets all the time. We have a finite amount of space, and sort of at the moment a finite amount of restaurants. And if you go into many of our restaurants on Tuesday night in October, there's nobody there. and there's, you could park a bus on Job's Lane many days. There's no problem with parking. And I think that some of what needs to sort of maybe be assessed is that some things have changed. I think that some restaurants maybe intimidate people, maybe not, I don't know. I was just in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and I was floored at triple the space. They've got so much more land in their central village. Every store was rented, and I was looking. Because I wanted to see, or you're in Wyoming now. I mean, it's posh, but Southampton is too. And I feel like some of the mistakes are people start closing because Tuesday nights are dead, or Tuesdays are dead and the village thinks the store owner. And that's where I think we've made our biggest mistake. I don't think if you went into most restaurants in the dead of winter that they're full. So do we want to add some more in, or do we want to try and fine-tune what we have? To me, that's what I'd like to focus on, fine-tuning what we have and making that work. The old Little Red was empty for the entire summer. If people were begging to get into this town to open a restaurant, where were they? I don't know what the specifics were from that lease. But I also say that lease could have been renegotiated had there been somebody who wanted to take that on. And I'm floored that a restaurant only opened August 15th in the village when it was empty for 6 months or more. And I'm pretty sure Red Bar at the moment is still closed, possibly things pending. But I just feel like we need to fine-tune some of our acts. And as a retailer, I spend my days trying to figure out how to get the person who wants to spend $25 and $2,500. And that's my goal every day, is to never shame anybody out of my store because they can't afford it. And I think that that's a big problem with a lot of locals.
Are we going to address parking? Are we ready to address parking?
I'm happy to have you address parking.
Okay.
Jump right on it.
All right, well, about 10 years ago, the village, and I think maybe the Southampton Association and maybe the Chamber, brought in these experts who were small town experts. This is what they did. They studied small towns and they made recommendations about how to improve the town. And this is all they did. They were small town people. And I got to know the one very well because he came in my store for breakfast every morning. But the first thing he talked about, of course, was the sewers. He said that. He says, you need sewers. Right? The second thing he says, your parking is crazy. He says, all of Main Street should have been pay, that there should have been meters. But that being said, and that should have been prime parking spot for people who want to pay and want to go. But you have to have an alternative to that. And everybody remembers Moon Varadian, who'd been talking about a parking garage behind there for 40 to 50 years ago. And this man presented drawings and diagrams of these 3-level parking garages that look like one level, like one thing. And nothing has ever happened with it. And it actually hurts my business outside of the village in that people in the village who got parking spots don't want to leave them to come for lunch or anything else. So, without some sort of, I thought years ago they talked about having like a revolving kind of bus or small bus or something to drive people around, they won't leave their parking spot, so they're going to keep it. And so that's part of the problem with the restaurants and with everything else, is that the parking is taken up, and we all know it, by employees and by everything. And kudos to Bo for suggesting he's not going to do it anymore. And but that's one of the things. And like I said, this suggestion and the other suggestions that this person made, I have never seen any of them instituted. Just like, we wasted our money, but it was just like, they were all good suggestions. The other suggestion we talked about was the entrance coming into the village and that needed to be maintained and everything, and that it shouldn't be obstructed, and it should be like a clear path. And I know in the paper this week it was about Hampton Road, which I don't even want to go there, but I avoid it like the plague now. And my friend lives on Post Crossing, and his road has become like a major thoroughfare because everybody avoids Hampton Road. And we had talked about, they had approved retail stores on North Sea Road, my road, where my store is at, which would have done nothing but clog up that road as well, And so that's my thing about parking.
All right, we got a question back here. Ashley.
Thanks, Joe. Hi, Ashley Heather from the Spur. So I've got a slightly different generational lens. I lived in the city 15 years. I moved here. I bought a house here 7 years ago. I was a weekender, as we call ourselves, and then I moved here full-time 5 years ago. I have 3 kids at Southampton Elementary School, or at least one's now gone to the middle school this year. So I'm kind of a local, but not yet. I think it's 10 years. You're allowed to be called a local. Or generation, okay, not even 10 years. But the lens that I have is on the restaurants. I've got 3 kids, I've got an au pair, I'm lucky to have some help with that. We go to the restaurant, we spend $200 one night. Simple meal, not glamorous, no wine, $200. You can't do that very often. And certainly most families can't do that. So more restaurants, fine, but the price of restaurants already, and that comes back to real estate. Real estate is pegged to people's homes. They've gone up so much. Commercial real estate hasn't, so that's the battle of why the rents are going up. People want returns on their money. It's just simple business. It's a very difficult problem. What we're trying to do is encourage more people to come out so the pie grows. The issue with that is there's a conflict. There's already bad traffic, not enough parking, et cetera, et cetera. But the only way for businesses to make more money, other than charging more to the existing customers, is have more customers. More customers means competing with the other villages, Sag Harbor and others that are doing better in some ways, but also bringing new people out who maybe have a weekend home but want to live here like we did full time because they're not paying $50,000 a year for a private school in the city or other place, and they've got tremendous public schools out here. So I think there's a huge population of people. We held an event 4 weeks ago called Transitioning to the Hamptons. We had 35 families come with no marketing, organized in 2 weeks, who wanted to learn about moving to the Hamptons full-time from the city. They wanted to give up their life, the expense, and enjoy the beauty of this area and the good schools and so forth. So The question to me is, you've got to grow the pie in a different way. Maybe there are different audiences out there that we can appeal to, move them from being seasonal to full-time residents, and then you have to provide the services and the experiences that they expect because they're giving them up in the city. So you have to bring elements of that out here. It's a different demographic. They think differently, they act differently, but they also have money to spend, and I think that would help a lot of the business issues here.
Anybody want to take that? Or we can just leave the comments?
Yeah,
Mark?
I'll touch base on that because Ashley, I've known Ashley through my business, and I get to meet a lot of people in the same situation that they want to come out here. They love it out here. They love. It's really interesting to hear when people start to come out here, and I'm like, well, why do you want to be out here? And they said, because we love the community. We love the fact that we can go down and do X, Y, and Z. We love the fact that we can walk into a place and see someone that we know. So there is that draw, and that's why it goes back to sort of knowing everybody, so you get that familiarity. And you're right, Ashley, you are, I call you tweeners, because you're in between, a certain group and another group. But you attach to a lifestyle that we, I'm saying myself as a local, really appreciate. You don't want to come reinvent the wheel. What you'd like to see is attached to the style of life that we have, which is quality, and have some new experience to come with it. So they are growing. We have a lot of second homeowners in Southampton Village. I think 7 out of 10 are second homeowners. That's going to be the reality moving forward. We need to embrace that. We really do. And if we don't, we're going to be sitting here just having this conversation over and over again. So, we are changing a bit, but our values don't have to. That's the difference. We got to embrace those values. Sag Harbor's a good example, not just because they're a dining district, because of their community. When that cinema burned down, they jumped on that right away. Everybody from every walk of life, and they got it rebuilt. And I would say, if that happened here, would we be as effective and efficient in a timely manner as Sag Harbor? Thank you.
That's a good point.
Hi, I'm Lynn Arthur. I'm a volunteer on the town sustainability committee where I'm the energy chair. I want to plant a flag in a bit of a complex and big idea. And that is, there's a nexus between the parking problem and the energy challenge that we have, and the opportunity to save the environment, but also lower your cost of operations, especially small businesses. And that is, at the county level and at the state level, there are grants, and there's an enormous focus on parking structures. Putting, I know it's not the most beautiful thing, but the idea that I've been hearing you talk about is a parking structure in town, somewhere in town on a village-owned property that has solar, and guess what? Electric vehicles are here and they're growing in double digits, and I don't see any EV charging stations anywhere. So where are all the people? I own a hybrid, so I can charge my car at my house, which is just a few miles from here. But people are going to come into the village with electric vehicles, and they're not going to have a place to plug them in. So there's an opportunity to integrate all of these things, and possibly all the renovations that you want to make to your, some people would say poorly designed parking, the way it's organized, and have it pay for itself. So that's the idea I just want to put out there, and we on the committee at the town level are working on these kinds of projects, and would be more than happy to get involved.
Thank you, Lynn Arthur, and I look forward working with you as I just joined the town sustainability committee. But I will say that the Planning Commission and the board has just approved. Can everyone hear me now? Yes. All right, thank you. I just wanted to let you know that the town board has just approved, with the support of the Planning Commission, a consulting firm to come in there with regards to West Main Street parking. They are analyzing the traffic flow. To Eric's point, I don't know if he's still here. I bike all over the village, as you've probably seen me with my 20-year-old bike, and I can't get anywhere from Hill Street. I can't. I'm landlocked because it's no biking everywhere, or I get a ticket. So having said that, that integration is critical, and we are aware of the EV charging stations, Lynn, and we're looking to import that in strategic locations in the village. We're also much more in tune with regard to sustainability in general, but we don't want to do it slipshod. We need to put together an appropriate plan where we know we have grant funding and it adds the most to the village and the least to our expense base. But thank you for raising that.
Okay, great. I want to come over to this side of the room. I think the gentleman back here.
Thank you, and thank you for handing me the mic. I know a lot of you, but I'm Mark Rowan. I'm a restaurateur. I'm also a landlord. And I would echo a number of the comments that have been made. I do think the comment over here, how many seats do we really have? I've had the job, many of you have, for Vail, Beaver Creek, Keystone, Breckenridge, and Heavenly. We had great data. How many restaurant seats do we have? How many restaurant seats are in Sag Harbor? How many do we need? And I'll echo the comment from Mr. Waxman. The world has changed. We have too much of the same use in the village. No matter what we do, we will have in stores if we only offer one use. The demand for retail space is declining. It's not just declining in Southampton Village, it's declining everywhere in the world. It is replaced by experience. Experience is primarily food and beverage. It does not have to be a restaurant. And as a restaurateur, I'll address Aaron's comments. To be a restaurateur is a labor of love. This is a true labor of love, even versus being a retailer. This is a business that is fraught with peril. To be a successful restaurateur in a seasonal location, you need breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You need to be in the village where you have high density of traffic. I would venture to say the place we're in, very, very unique place. They've been able to make this thing work. I think it is going to be very, very difficult for the Little Reds of the world, Red Bar, to sustain themselves because that's one meal a day. And the final point I will make before I hand back the mic, I hope in the pursuit of septic that this does not become all or none. 30 million, even at a low interest rate, is a lot of money. It is unclear to me that every space, every commercial space in the village needs to be ready to be a restaurant. Restaurants generate a lot of septic waste. There's just no way around that. Maybe it's only a limited block that needs to be available for septic. Technology is there to do this in part, not in whole. I would add my voice to Mr. Waxman's. I also would be willing to contribute to help transition this. This is good long-term for the village. It's good long-term for those of us who have property in the village. And I think if we set the bar so high that we have to do everything, we will, like many towns out here, do nothing. So thank you.
I wonder if I can bring Shannon into the mix. As the owner of a retail shop in the village and brick and mortar retail shop, you're under assault so many different ways. How do you adjust to that? And what is the future for a retail shop in a small village that does have a clientele at least 6 months of the year, but the special challenges? I'm always amazed, and I think you talked about it in our print section, about people who come in, look at an item, and then look it up online and order it somewhere else. Is there a shame factor that needs to start happening with people that I just think the gall of somebody who would do that to a small business is just mystifying to me. I mean, how do you meet those challenges?
Well, I think a lot of what was just discussed is the retail landscape has changed drastically, and retailers who are not trying to evolve and adjust to it are suffering, and really people are looking for an experience, just like an experience when they come into the village. The people that are successful in retail are offering an experience to those who come into their store, whether it's through incredible customer service or some other kind of things. I mean, we see it in-store cafes and that kind of experience, which again goes to the septic. And again, even that, you have to be a particular kind of entrepreneur to want to have that kind of experience for your customer. So in terms of the internet and shopping online and things like that, again, it's about the experience. If someone comes into yes, they can. First of all, we in particular, I strive to find items that are coastal in nature, that are unique. We choose them for their elements of sustainability, and so we have a niche. And so I think also with any business, whether it's a restaurant or a retail business, what your niche is and focusing on a niche is going to make you successful. But you have to be aware, and you have to be willing to evolve, and you have to know what other people are doing and what other people are charging. And if you choose to sell the same product as someone else, you have to be offering them a better experience to get someone to buy that product from you. And that's really, how we've been able to be successful almost 20 years and be open year-round here in the village, 6 days a week. And also because we offer service. We're not strictly retail. I'm an interior designer, and we offer services to people as well. So that's kind of how we're able to do it. But I just wanted to sort of piggyback on a lot of what's been said here, because I agree with sewage. I think that's something that's been discussed for a very long time. I understand that we definitely need to look at the numbers and what the capacity is for the village for that. But I don't think anybody wants to walk down the street and see restaurant after restaurant. We have to have a mixture of things, and especially this year in particular, I've had so many people come by where I am on Job's Lane. I think in the spring there were 10 stores just on my side of the street alone that were vacant. And I think that the idea of getting year-round businesses, retail and otherwise, is really important. I think the vacancy issue is something that needs to be addressed in some way in terms of what we can do, because I think that is part of why you want to walk through the village. That's why you need to walk from place to place, and I think that's something that we really had to try and focus on.
Jesse, very quickly, the vacancy issue. You have proposed the idea of a vacancy tax. Is that something that's got some legs, and you're continuing to look ahead to doing that?
Thanks, Joe. At the end of the day, the village needs to do whatever it needs to do to provide the ideal business environment and the ideal environment for businesses and entrepreneurs to invest in our village. That, what you described, is really the option of last resort. What we need to really focus on is to maintain this optimal business environment. I might even actually turn this question to a landlord like Mark Waxman and say to Mark, what do you suggest we do when we have 1 or 2 or 3 landlords here that just are not interested in transacting? They're not interested in renting their space. We have one landlord, also from South Florida, just can't be bothered to rent. Too much work. They own the property, but don't want to rent. So I would actually ask Mark, as a real estate owner in the village, a retail real estate owner, what do we do?
What are some strategies that might work?
Well, the first thing I would do is I would sit down with the owner one-on-one and actually find out what's going on. There's many reasons. There could be a family dispute taking place, partnership disputes, tax problems, estate planning. There's so many things that could be happening. Most landlords are interested in renting their space. We're down in Palm Beach, and there's a landlord down there I know, I won't mention his name, who is well known that it's very difficult to do a deal with him, so he keeps his buildings empty and he couldn't care less. There are landlords like that. There are business people who, for example, retailers who won't lower their price on merchandise and they don't sell and take a loss. I mean, we're dealing with a private enterprise, and that's one of the things you have to suffer with. But I would sit down with those landlords who are giving you a difficult time and find out what's really going on. As far as most landlords that I know, they want to rent their space, and they want to rent them to qualified tenants. The problem we're facing in the industry today is the internet has changed the retail business dramatically. You do not need large space to function. And that's happening all over the United States. I think this past year, at least more than 25% more stores have closed retail space throughout the United States. It's increasing, and you're going to find vacancies all over the United States because there's no need for large stores when you can go on the internet and buy the merchandise. So those retailers are going to become innovative, will survive. What I would do is I would work with the landlords and see what's needed, and work with them, and then see if you can accommodate them, because most landlords do want to rent. The problem you have in resort areas, because we have properties, for example, down in Worth Avenue, and they're starting to get vacancies there. Worth Avenue was always the premier location known throughout the world. And then the people who ran the town started thinking that it's going to stay that way forever. And slowly but surely, the sidewalks were deteriorating, the parking problem, listening to the same problems here, we could say Worth Avenue. Employees were taking up all the parking spaces there. They don't mark the tire. They take a picture of your car. and they have it logged in so they can see when it was taken. But there's a problem. So the employees have been encouraged to go to municipal parking lots and take a bus into the village. But slowly but surely, Worth Avenue was deteriorating. So the landlords got together and assessed ourselves in a district, and we put up the money to rebuild the sidewalks and the road and the beautification. And I'll tell you, many of the people with the mansions there didn't want to put up a dime. They said, what do we care? We don't own the buildings. We're going to entertain ourselves at our country club. But slowly and surely, all the tourists stopped going to Worth Avenue. The wealthy South Americans who used to come to Worth Avenue stopped coming. So if you don't recognize the problems, and all the problems you have here are not unique. In any resort area, Southampton caters to a resort area. It's beautiful to live here all year round. It's God's country. But you're catering to the tourists who come here who have second or third homes. And those are the people, if they didn't come here, the village would not be thriving. So do whatever you got to do to keep those people here. That's all I can encourage you.
This goes, Kimberly, to your point about looking to other areas for answers, too, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so let me first of all second what he just said. The problems we're having with retail are across the country. They're not unique to Southampton, and they're not going away. So we really need to deal with it. One of the things that came out very clearly in the report I referred to before in 2009 was the deterioration of the public infrastructure in Southampton. So if we're asking someone to come from another village and come here, our parking lots are full of potholes. They have the parking technology in 1965. The spots are the wrong size. Half of the spots you can't see anymore. We have 1,200 parking spots in the village. In the most active weekend of the summer, the peak summer weekend, they're 80% occupied. We don't have a parking capacity issue. We have a parking management issue. I think if you go to East Hampton and see how that main parking lot was rebuilt, it's embarrassing. That is significantly different, and I don't think it's a pure accident that the rebuilding of that parking lot led to the expansion of the luxury sector in that town. So I think, we talk about what government can do versus what business can do. I think it's, as a member of the planning commission, I have to say it's imperative, and we have started working with the trustees on this, that we take on the parking lots and rebuild them in a modern way that makes someone from Bridgehampton or Sag Harbor or West Hampton want to come here because it's an attractive and welcoming environment. The other thing I would say, which I know Trustee Allen has pointed out 100 times, if you come to the village, I would give a bet to anyone in this room to ask a friend who's never been here to come to the village and see if they can figure out where the parking lots are. There's not. You come into the village and you would think there would be a sign, parking lots this way. There are no signs. And the main parking lot, there's a sign about the size of this telling you that there's a parking lot. So I think there's a lot the village can do that would really encourage more private sector investment.
Okay. Aaron?
This is in response to Mr. Waxman. I listened to you saying that retail is dying all over the place. Florida here, empty spaces are everywhere. When I buy an orchid and I bring it into my store, it gets top dollar price the first day. By the second day, if I couldn't sell it, or the third day or the second week, whatever it is, I start to adjust. I go, okay, I gotta get rid of this. I've got to do what I've got to do. And I do think that when you see spaces everywhere, all over the country, you might say, I wonder if the rent's too high. I wonder if people can't afford to rent my space, or do they have to charge $250 for a sweater that everybody else on the internet was selling for $100. We drove them to the internet. They had to go to the internet because the prices had to try and pay the rent. And I do feel that if we're really honest, everybody's looking for everything outside of their realm, out of their jurisdiction. We want septic, we want parking. But the reality is, for 7 or 8 months of the year, you could drive down Job's Lane and Main Street and for the most part get your parking. I want some people to be responsible for these vacancies, because we can't say it's all us. I'm open 7 days a week, and my business is growing in its 29th year. I opened a candy store behind my flower shop to try and create a feeling. And it is a labor of love at a flower shop, because I have a ticking bomb. As soon as I fill my case, I got to sell it, because I've got a very short window to make my money. And so I have to be really smart about the way, do I attract people to me? Am I open 7 days a week? Am I willing to do almost anything? And I do feel that the landlords, and not all of them, because there are some great landlords in this village, but there are a lot of landlords in this village who feel, I don't need to take a hit, let them take the hit. And the reality is, we all have to be responsible for what's happening here. It's not just lousy stores, it's not just, we need more restaurants, because, as much as I'd like to have a few more restaurants to choose from that I could afford. And I'm going to say, I just went to Jackson Hole. I ate out every day and every night, and every time I got the check, my daughter and I looked at it and we were like, wow, that is awesome. I just ate dinner and she had 3 drinks, and it's $85 in Jackson Hole. Okay, so, it's the same kind of place. And I'm just saying, we have to be honest and stop making pretend that people are charging more money for everything that the internet is offering, because of course you can afford it when you don't have a retail space and you don't have to pay the piper.
Shannon, I'll come back to you in a second. Let me give Mr. Waxman a chance to...
First of all, I want to make sure, I never said that retailers who are closing stores are lousy retailers. Walk along Madison Avenue, which was at one time, and still is, one of the premier location for shopping, and you'll see vast amount of vacancies. It's not because the landlords, and I know many of them, don't want to rent. If you want to know why, it's because the retailers are closing the stores because the volume is not there. It has nothing to do with the rent automatically. Correct. Now, rent is a composite of real estate taxes, insurance, utilities, the cost of repairs and maintenance. No one's reducing your taxes automatically in this village or any village around the United States. And insurance is no longer, we bid major packages. But you can bid all you want, but when there's a hurricane, and it may hit, let's say, Texas, and there's $10 billion of damages, your rates go up, and you find the next year when your premiums come due, yours are going up even if you never had a claim. How many people actually carry hurricane insurance out here for wind insurance? Most of you people probably don't even have hurricane insurance. You have wind insurance with a big exemption, if you read the policy carefully, that says once the storm is a named storm, you're not covered. Do you carry flood insurance? You're in a flood zone here. Whether you like it or not, do you carry that insurance? And who's going to pay for that? And your utilities on Long Island are higher. Who's going to pay for that? So these are the composites that go in, and the retailers today are facing the problem that they cannot afford the rent because the volume isn't there.
Can I ask you a question? You talked about Madison Avenue, and you talked about Worth Avenue, which is Palm Beach? Palm Beach? Gotcha. So is there a difference for landlords in a town like Southampton or Palm Beach versus Madison Avenue, in the sense of you have sort of a community responsibility in Southampton that you don't necessarily have on Madison Avenue? Is that fair?
Southampton, like Worth Avenue, is a resort area. It used to be, for example, Saks Fifth Avenue used to close here when the season was over in the old days, and then go down to Worth Avenue. The same employees were relocated. The Breakers Hotel, for example, is the main hotel on the island of Palm Beach, used to close in the early 1970s for the whole summer. Times have changed. They do conventions now. But in resort areas, it's normally a 5 to 6 month business at most. The reason the restaurants are dead out here in November, very few people are out here in November. Look at your population statistics. This is a resort area. It has been since the turn of the 19th century. It's a wonderful place to live for families, but it's a resort area. And retailers are catering mostly to the fact that you have people coming here with second and third homes. Now, Southampton has an advantage, which it's losing for many reasons. It always got the day trippers. Any retailer who comes to Southampton knows, if they do their homework, the roads are so crowded that the days of going to East Hampton and back and forth are over. You can spend hours just going one way. So if you're a retailer, you really want to start in Southampton, open up a location. You get the day trippers. They don't want to go all the way out. But the park, it's a multiple problem. Sewers is one problem. The parking is a big problem. The parking lots are awful. It's like a minefield. In back of our building, there's a parking lot that's owned by J.P. Morgan. It was the old Chemical Bank building. Now that bank, J.P. Morgan, is one of the most productive banks, okay? The parking lot is owned by the bank, which I believe has some type of an arrangement with the village where it can be used by the village, and the village, I think, is supposed to maintain it. But the village is strained for money. I'm sure that if Jamie Dimon, who's very philanthropic, okay, knew about it, and someone sent him a picture and said, "Can you help us?" that lot would be fixed up tomorrow morning by the bank. These are the things that have to be done. Make his money that way.
Joe, I can jump in here
Yes.
too.
Can I, before we
It's
come to
being
you-
paved in about 3 weeks.
I actually wanted to ask Bo Hulse. You mentioned something about this in the comments in our print section about maybe leases needing to change to respond to the commercial leases changing in the same way that residential leases have changed. Do you want to talk about that?
What I shared is that we have summer rentals. And the homeowners rent the house from Memorial Day to Labor Day for, let's say, I'll use round numbers, $100,000. Can you hear me okay now? All right, here we go. I'll repeat myself. Summer rentals and what we call it, it goes from Memorial Day to Labor Day. And then we have an opportunity for that homeowner to do what we say is a winter rental for a lot less money. The homeowner's very happy, home is occupied, doesn't have to winterize it, and also there's money coming in. It doesn't represent anything like $100,000, but it is something. And what my thought was, is if we have these rents that are this big and the owners of the retail space want to travel and go to another place, maybe then give an opportunity to a young entrepreneur, someone who wants to start a business, maybe an art studio who is not active all the time, maybe they need a space, but there is opportunity for that landlord to bring in some revenue, and also for us, it's another store that's open, and everybody wins. So that I just had that concept, and I just thought that may help vacancy and also bring in money, and then more people to buy restaurants and etc.
We're at 2 o'clock, so we'll go a little bit over here, but we want to pick it up a little bit here and get a couple more questions.
Thank you all. I'm Vicki Kahn. I live here in the village. I also am a business owner. I have 2 businesses, Century 21 Agawam and Hamptons Virtual. I have a great sense of community. You all know that. Everybody's sitting up there on the dais. I try and do all my shopping, all my eating, all my buying here in Southampton. There's one issue that we really didn't talk about, and as a business owner, and it affects all businesses, retail, entertainment, dining, and that is help. We have to have help to run the stores, okay, no matter what kind of business. And if you travel through the town and through the village, you will see help wanted signs everywhere. Why? Why is it so difficult? Because it's very expensive to live in Southampton, particularly in the village, and it's hard for young people to find affordable living. So this is something that maybe affects zoning, planning. It's something that I would like to throw out because I think we do need some innovative solutions to help all of the business owners. We help the business, we help the residents. Thank you.
Let me get another comment from over here.
I just, getting back to, and it has to do with the restaurants, I don't think we really need more restaurants. Sag Harbor, it isn't just septics, it's fun. And Montauk is fun. And obviously not me, but I'm in touch with a lot of people in their 20s and 30s. Some of them live in my home. And they take the train to Montauk, and then they group Uber back. For whatever reason, Southampton's always been kind of a snooze to these kids. We've been deeply conflicted about young people. We don't want the bars. We didn't want Uber. If you want to emulate Sag Harbor and some of these more fun places. We need different types of restaurants, and we need to embrace young people. Young people today are better about drinking and driving than certainly my folks were. They love the Ubers, and they keep the place vibrant at night. It's a shame. I can't get my young people to come out after Labor Day because there's no place to go and meet other young people. I'm looking at you, Jesse, because I went to Brown about 40 years before you. And I'm thinking, you're young, but we got to make it a little more fun. We got to trust the young people, and we've got to have the confidence to set up some outdoor bars. It isn't just septics that make Sag Harbor fun and alive. It's embracing youth, and we've always been conflicted about that.
That's an excellent comment. I could not agree more. Interestingly, the gentleman sitting right behind you, Bruce Bachman, I don't know if he's still there, and Ashley as well, had recommended in one of our meetings that we actually turn Nugent Street, which is an underutilized and underdeveloped street, into a nightlife or lively, more fun street, and be able to channel some of the development and activities towards Nugent Street, which currently has a vacancy with HSBC, which currently has a vacancy with Sterling National Bank, which currently has a laundromat and some other places that, again, maybe are being underutilized. So that was a great idea that Bruce suggested, and it's definitely something that we should look into because you're right. Young people, millennials and other generations, doesn't matter even age for that matter, don't want to hang out in Southampton Village after Labor Day. In fact, most don't even want to hang out in Southampton Village before Labor Day. So that's a real situation, and I love to explore that further because we've talked about experiences, but you can't put it more eloquently. We need fun. So that's a great comment. Now, one other thing that we should think about is really coming up with the vision for what Southampton Village could be. So in speaking with some business leaders, one person suggested maybe Southampton Village could become a technology hub. We've got the beaches, we've got surfing, we need some places for people to live, but we should look into that. And we want to attract young people to our village. People are actually leaving places like Silicon Valley because it's gotten too expensive. They're leaving New York City because of the SALT tax and things like that. So we can turn Southampton Village, if we really want to channel and focus our efforts, into some type of hub, technology hub, where everybody from my generation and younger are working remotely, and use everything that Southampton Village has to offer, from our great downtown to our amazing beaches to a vibrant village and a vibrant community that could start with something like this.
And let me try and get two very quick questions before we wrap up here.
I think this meeting has been absolutely fantastic, and we've talked about so many different things. One of the things that has only been mentioned once or twice is housing. I think we need a serious meeting just about housing. We need people here. We need people that can afford to work here, live here, and then the restaurants will flourish, the stores will flourish, because we'll have people here. It won't be just called a summer destination. It'll be a place where you want to come and live and stay all year round.
I will politely ask you not to leave when we take the final question, because I have some news on that front. I will address that. One last question.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello? Okay, that's better. Thank you. My name is Ian Duke. First, I want to say thank you to everyone who's here. This has been fantastic. I'm a local business owner. I own this business that we're all sitting in. So many great points, so many great ideas, and it's so great to see this level of enthusiasm for everything. I just want to chime in on the word fun. Nobody is a bigger believer than me. We really try our hardest to create as much fun as we can in the village, and I just want to let you know that any idea that you have, any idea anyone wants to be a part of, we're in. We try constantly to come up with new things, new energies, new ideas. We want youth, we want older, we want everybody. Do we need more restaurants? Maybe. Maybe we could just fill the restaurants we already have. You know, that was a point that was raised before. We need all of you in our restaurants so we can pay our rent. Every one of us, and forget, if you don't have to like my restaurants, don't come to mine. Go to someone else's. But please support this village. Go out in this village. Shop in this village. It doesn't matter if it's flowers, doesn't matter if it's cigars, food, drink. We need you. Yes, entertainment, yes, of course. And newspapers. Again, thank you all so, so much. And hopefully we'll be hosting again and continue working with you. Thank you.
That's actually where I'm going next. I want to thank everybody for coming and thank all the panelists. I want to thank Ian and Scott and Union Cantina for the wonderful lunch. Our next event is October 4th, Friday, back here, and the focus will be young families, our workforce, and the crisis of affordable housing. We hope we're moving things in the right direction with conversations like this. Please stay engaged. Please keep reading papers. Subscribe to your local newspapers, whether it's us or anybody else. It's a very important thing for the community, and help us all build this community from the bottom up. Thank you very much for being here today for this inaugural event. Thanks.